Sketch comedy every Thursday on the Top Hat Balloon Show. Subscribe now.
In this episode of Another Zelda podcast, David and Kate build a top 10 list of their favorite towns and villages.
Hello and welcome to Another Zelda podcast. I am your co-host, David Geisler, and I am here with my regular co-host, Kate May. Kate, how you doing?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
That's a lot of goods. I'm so happy that you're so good.
I'm so good.
I'm so happy right now.
Things are awesome. Weather's great. It's sunny out.
Yeah, finally in the Midwest here, we're finally getting summer.
Finally.
Now that we're halfway through summer in the calendar.
Yeah, summer is like 60 whole degrees.
I was at the harbor market yesterday with my nieces, and I had 4 layers on.
Yep.
It was so cold. It was crazy. I think it was legitimately like 50 degrees out.
Yep, it was great.
But hopefully it's actually starting now. Today it feels like it.
Yeah. And we have an awesome topic for today's episode as well, so I'm excited for that too.
Hey, thanks for getting me back on track there. I was rambling a little bit. I appreciate it. I was actually, as we were talking about the weather, I was kind of thinking to myself like, oh, it'd be nice to get out in that weather. I think you might have some bike rides planned later with your husband.
Yeah, that is the plan. We like to do that and go to like a park, read a book outside.
Amazing.
Soak in the vitamin D. It's nice.
It's good for you. It's good for you. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be doing top 10. I'm just going to call it top 10 towns.
Cool.
When we were talking about this in our show notes, we were like, let's do towns and villages. But I love the alliteration, and I'm going for it.
I like it.
Top 10 towns.
Top 10 towns.
So we've both made this classic top 10 episode. We've both made a list of 5, and let's see what we get. Now, this one we recorded very quickly after deciding the topic, so I did not reach out to our audience or anything, so I don't have audience feedback on this one. This is going to be almost old school, like the beginning of season 1, where it was really just our own thoughts. I have some honorable mentions in case we have some doubles.
Yep.
But before that, we do have plenty of listener feedback in regards to some of our other episodes, and I'd like to share some of that with our audience.
Do it.
Great. Well, in our favorite NPCs episode, back episode 7 in season 1, Dolan McNabb over on YouTube here said, I love how you mentioned that Link's an avatar of the player. As a left-handed person, I've always drawn subtle connections to Link, but once I realized that I'm a gender non-conforming person, I had a whole new respect for the series and Link's appearance in the games, looking in the middle enough to represent a boy, girl, or someone in between. Keep up the wonderful work. Nothing better to listen to on my drive to and from work or while replaying the older Zelda games. Bye for now.
That's
Dolan,
really
thank you.
Awesome. That is so cool. There are things that our listeners tell us about that I would never even think about in my daily life. So it's just really, really cool how those aspects of the games can affect someone in that kind of way.
I agree, absolutely. And that expression can be furthered through communities like this where we are just talking about and celebrating these games. And Kate, it is interesting. I love doing this show with you because we can kind of bring slightly different perspectives to the games, and as the games mature and have more nuance to them, I think that's a really nice thing to recognize.
Absolutely. I look forward to the future of the storytelling of this game franchise because I think the possibilities are endless, honestly.
Indeed. I have another heartwarming comment here. I believe this one was over on Facebook. It might have been a private message. Ryan Kuhn messaged us and said, Kuhn, Kuhn, I think that's how that'd be pronounced.
Sure.
He said, in Ocarina of Time, Ruto gives the Zora Sapphire to Link as a pre-marriage agreement engagement. I actually used the same in a ring to ask my now wife. Great podcast, and like the lore and people of the world episodes, keep up the great work.
That's awesome.
And I just said, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about that on an episode.
So cute.
Yes, very cool, Ryan. Very cool.
That's awesome.
Let me see. What else do we have? We have a couple other things. Oh, real quick, Anthony Verdon over on Patreon said, shout out to Alyssa. My text tone is Navi saying, hey, listen. Love it. I think I told a story about her. We've often talked about using Zelda text tones on our phones. I'm reading some feedback here. That's why I got a little distracted. I apologize. Jackson Stallings over on YouTube on our favorite ways to regain hearts episode said, I'm replaying the Oracle games, and there are rings that change you into Octoroks, Subterraneans, and more. I really enjoy those. So that is something that you and I have spoken about a little bit. I'm very excited to jump into the Oracle games probably next season. I'm sure that I'll lend you the Game Boy Player again and let you play it up on the TV.
Awesome.
I suspect that you're going to enjoy them a lot as we go further and further into this podcast. But there's an added mechanic, a bit like the Kinstones in Majora's Mask, Minish Cap. I knew it started with an M. A bit like the Kinstones, there's an added mechanic in the Oracle games where you can wear rings and they modify effects to your person.
Okay.
I was not a fan at first, just like how we spoke about the Kinstones. All three of these games are Capcom games. They love to add one more layer on. But when replaying Oracle of Ages recently, I was all about it, and it was a lot of fun. There's rings that do weird things.
I mean, that seems like cooler in the sense that the Kinstones were like things that you could or you could or did not have to do. They'd be like, oh, it's a treasure chest with rubies in it, or something like that, where the reward wasn't necessarily necessary or even that useful sometimes.
No, I agree.
But this sounds more like actually applicable to playing the game.
If I remember correctly, some of the rings you must use, and then some are just kind of for the fun of it. There was not famously, but what Sean and I talked about. Shane, I'm so sorry. What Shane and I talked about in the favorite ways to regain hearts episode was a ring that replenishes your hearts by steps you take. It's a pedometer.
Oh, it's a Fitbit.
It's a Fitbit ring. It's a pedometer ring. And as Link walks around more, his hearts slowly regain. And they don't just regain over time. You have to literally walk and take steps.
Oh, that's funny.
So that's
cool.
a fun one. He talked about how he just put that on sometimes when he was adventuring around, and all of a sudden there you are, full hearts.
That's cool.
We have another comment here from our favorite ways to regain hearts episode. Joseph Murray said real quickly, another great episode. Made my waiting between matches at a tournament so much easier. I don't know what the sport was, but Joseph, cool.
That's awesome.
So happy that people are listening to the show in all these different ways. Oh my gosh, another favorite ways to regain hearts one. Fluffy Little Hufflepuff said, I just found your podcast and I'm really enjoying it. I'm a pretty new Zelda fan, about 2 years, and I really enjoy listening to other people discussing the awesome series. Keep up the great work, Party Face.
Thanks.
I want to jump to one more. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay, two more. This is kind of cute. Rebecca Jewell is one of our patrons over on Patreon. She's a supporter for sure, and also engages with us often. So she said here, commented on a post for a recent episode, she said, already told Shane that I'm going to play through Star Fox Adventures, which is another Zelda-like, which we'll probably review in season 3 or 4 or something.
Cool.
Beyond Good and Evil first. Actually, I believe Beyond Good and Evil might be in an episode or 2. Anyway, already told Shane that I'm going to play through Star Fox Adventures, but I guess I now need to pull a Kate and play through Ocarina of Time again as well. Loved hearing both of your thoughts on this beautiful game. She was commenting on our Ocarina of Time episode over on Patreon. Thanks for being so awesome. Heart face emoji.
You're welcome.
Also, side note, I had a slight heart attack and definitely called my husband at work to let him know that you read my feedback.
Oh.
Of course we did, Rebecca. Thank you so much. She's one of our main supporters, I must say.
Please don't have another heart attack after this episode.
Okay, so this one kind of fits real quick. Musty Hobbit, at Musty Hobbit, we bumped into this gentleman and interviewed him at Midwest Gaming Classic. He tweeted us very quickly and said, again, a lot of favorite hearts replies right now. He said, well, not exactly hearts, quote unquote. I'm surprised that in Zelda 2, being invited into the woman's home for tea, quote unquote, to restore health wasn't at least an honorable mention. Fun episode. At Musty Hobbit, you're absolutely correct. We should have mentioned that. That is a hysterical, classic Zelda, not trope, but Zelda experience. And Kate, you may not know what I'm talking about yet.
I don't know. I haven't played that game.
We will be playing it soon. Well, not soon, but within a year, I'm sure. And in that game, when you go to a town, actually, let's pause because I want to save this moment for one of my fives.
Oh, okay.
Okay, in the top 10. So thank you, Musty Hobbit. That's great. Kate, let's jump into it. Let's get into our top 10s here.
Okay. Who's going to go first?
I know. I'm pulling up my notes. I'm sliding windows around on the computer here as I get the listener feedback out of the way.
Here's some computer music to illustrate this. Beep,
Okay,
boop,
so
beep,
let's see.
beep,
Just
boop,
going to move
boop,
that there. I'm
boop,
going to
boop,
move that
beep, boop,
window
boop,
there and
beep,
minimize.
boop, 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 beep,
Okay.
beep. Click,
Very
type,
good.
type,
And
click,
got
click, beep, boop. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Let's see. How about I go first? I'd love to hear what your top one is last.
Okay.
Cool. So actually, this is perfect. This goes right into it. Okay, great. I didn't even realize because I did move my top 5. I thought of a new town as we were getting ready for the show, and it totally rearranged my 5.
Excitement.
So what happened now is my 5th on the list, my first mention is Rudo Town in The Adventure of Link. Now, the Rudo Town, so there's a very cool connection with all of the towns in The Adventure of Link. They are all, well, it depends on your perspective. Let me say it this way. Characters in Ocarina are named after towns in The Adventure of Link.
Cool.
But canonically, The Adventure of Link comes way after Ocarina. So canonically, the towns in The Adventure of Link are named after important characters from Ocarina.
That worked out nicely.
It's kind of cool. So Rudo Town is one of the first towns you find when you're playing the game.
Okay.
It's before you even really learn how towns work. They work a little bit differently in that game. Almost everything works a little differently in that game, as you will come to discover. And it's cool. So when you go into towns in The Adventure of Link, they are side-scrolling. They're represented as side-scrolling towns.
Okay. Yep.
So
I've seen screenshots of this.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. It kind of feels like almost like the early Castlevania games. Obviously, there's a little bit of maybe a Mario thing there, but you're not really platforming. You're just navigating on the side. And for the time, it was kind of cool to see these things reflected that way, that they weren't just weird boxes that you were looking down on.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. This is the first time in release order that towns even existed. There aren't towns in the original The Legend of Zelda. You know?
Yeah.
So what does a town look like? How do we zoom in, artistically speaking, how do we zoom into a town? Well, we go to a side-scrolling view. So Rudo's cool. It's the first time you can jump around and you can talk to people. There really aren't too many people in The Legend of Zelda. And I remember being in grade school, and I played The Adventure of Link a little bit more than The Legend of Zelda because I was a little bit older when it came out. And I just had really fond memories of all the towns, but Rudo's the first one you really find. And so then on that note, Kate, in this town, there is essentially an inn. Every town essentially has an inn, and we now know that many of the inns in the Breath of the Wild game, or in the Breath of the Wild game, certainly in Breath of the Wild, but in some of the other Zelda games, if you sleep, you regain your hearts.
Right.
And that's also a trope in normal RPGs. Like every single Final Fantasy, you find an inn in a town. Well, The Adventure of Link borrowed that, and there's an inn. There's also a place to restore your magic. And we just got done actually mentioning in some of our listener feedback, I just realized how the series in release order has grown and matured and become a little bit more well-rounded. But back in the day, this inn is essentially represented by a hottie in a red dress. I'm just going to say that. And she walks out of this house, and if you talk to her, she says, if you come in, I can restore your hearts. And so you follow her in, and I don't know what happens, and then you come out and you have hearts. And if you travel a little bit later in the town, an ugly old lady says, I can regain your magic. You follow her, and then you come out and she regains your magic. So it's a little questionable. One might deduce how sketchy that may or may not be what Link does when he goes into these houses with the hottie women, but he gets hearts.
He drinks tea, right? That's what was mentioned in the feedback.
I feel like
Quote,
by
unquote,
today's
tea?
standards, it's almost a joke because it's obviously that's a product of the late 70s, early 80s, which now it's represented as inns. So Rudo is my my town, my first on my list of 5.
Cool.
And that's that. So what's your first?
My number 5 town is going to be Kakariko Village from Ocarina of Time.
There it is.
Yep. Some people may be surprised that it's not higher on my list, but to be fair, there is not too much to do here. It is obviously a very important part of the story and everything. So I felt like I had to include it somewhere, and this is where I have it here, number 5.
Yeah, I agree.
It's somewhere between like a super quaint, quiet village and like a growing town, especially between child and adult post nightmare time. You get the sense of that, obviously there's construction going on, so they are building and growing.
Well, that's kind of cool too, because when you're a kid, it's construction, and I think when you come back as an adult, it's a realized house. Isn't that right?
Yep. I think it's a game. I want to say it's a game
sure.
you come back. That particular thing that they're building. So yeah, there are different things that you can do when you're a child versus when you're an adult. I think it's cool that the people that you talk to have different things to say. Obviously, over 7 years, God, I would hope so that they'd have different things to say. They're in different places. Like I said, you have one additional building. They react to what's going on around them. I always like the creepy graveyard and the things that you can do in
Yes.
there. It's like another little bonus part of the town. You can move the gravestones or pull them back and, get rupees or fall down into tunnels and have little mini adventures in that kind of way. So there's some side quests happening. You have your cuckoos that you have to collect and everything. That's a fun little thing that can kind of introduce you to the town, which I think is the
because
point.
it forces you to walk around.
It forces you to walk around. It forces you to go like, how can I get up by the windmill up on that weird hill?
I like that.
How do I
You're
do
right.
that? So it kind of introduces you to all the different things you can do, the different characters that you then run into and everything. Obviously, when you come back as an adult, the shops have changed because they can no longer be in the castle town. So, everything's different. So you have to re-explore it when you're an adult too. So that's kind of it's kind of like two towns in one.
Because not only does the town grow a little bit in those 7 years, but another town has to kind of merge into it.
Right, exactly.
All of Castletown, they find new residents, and every building has kind of a new context when you go back as an adult.
Yep, and more people inside, obviously, because they're all squished into like 5 buildings.
I remember that town feeling big when I was a kid. The first time I played, I was like, I have so much to explore. Oh, there's another
Right.
area over here. Oh, there's another area over here.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's not quite as big as maybe. I also remember like Ordon Village feeling really, really big, and now it doesn't feel as big when you play.
Right.
But it was the closest thing to a fully realized functioning town in that game, even more so than Castletown, I'd say.
I agree. And that's why I didn't put Castletown in. I didn't include that one in my list because Kakariko Village to me was really, like you said, the actual town. Like I think the only one in that game, really, when you think about it. Like, I mean,
Yeah, no, I agree.
Kokiri Village is kind
Kokiri
of.
Village, they want you to have Goron City feel like a town. They want Zora's Domain to feel like a town. They kind of do, but they don't to me.
But they don't, right.
Yeah, you never get the sense in Death Mountain or over by Zora's Domain that as much as they try, it never feels like things are actually living there, I have to say. Like you don't see houses, or you don't say, oh, this is clearly where this person lives. Or,
Right. It doesn't seem like super self-sustaining.
it feels like that's where they hang out,
Yeah.
to be honest.
The clubhouse.
A little bit. And that's fine for that game.
Yeah.
But Kakariko Village definitely feels realized.
Yeah. So that's mine. I like the music that plays when you go in there. I like that you can go in different times of day and it has different vibes to it.
Yeah.
And people are doing and saying different things at different times of day. So that is my number 5 pick. I always, when they tell me to go there, when Impa is like, go to Kakariko Village, I'm like, okay. Yay.
Yeah.
Go over there.
Yeah.
Talk to everyone, hang out.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, I'll do my second here. And so now this is where for me it kind of gets interesting. Oh, I guess I even picked Rudo Town based on a little bit of game mechanics. It's the first time towns and villages really started to show up in a game.
Sure.
So a lot of my picks here I do have to do with the mechanics of some of these games. And there are some emotional picks as well, I'll admit. But the next one is, so I actually I'm very embarrassed and I didn't have time to Google this. What is the main island in Wind Waker, the town? Is it Windmill? I put Windmill Town real quick.
Windfall.
In my note. Windfall Island. Thank you so much. I knew there was a wind in there. And I picked it for this reason. In Ocarina of Time, and even in in Ocarina of Time, there's characters, they're doing their things, but they don't have a lot going on. Like you just said, like, oh, it's 7 years later, and they have a few new things to say.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to Windfall Island, it was my first experience playing a Zelda game where I was like, oh, these people really are living here. There's, they're kind of walking around and it does feel like they have lives.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel the homes. I do feel that there are beds in these homes and that people are living here, even if it's tight and condensed. And even if some of the walkways are a little weird, they spiral around other parts of buildings and things. Right. But that is it feels like a nice little community when you go to Windfall Island. So that was my second. How do you feel about Windfall? I think you like Windfall.
I do. It's on my list.
Oh, we'll find out where.
But not yet.
We'll find out where.
So I don't want to say too much just
Okay.
yet.
Well, let's save it then. All right. For me, it was such a step up from Ocarina of Time, where you go from characters standing there to characters actually walking around, characters even having some relationships with each other and stuff like that, and a little bit more AI, even if it's just people on paths making choices. These characters are, there's like that side quest with the gal that sneaks away at nighttime and stuff. And if you follow her, it unlocks a whole other side quest and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's just, it's neat.
And that comes back, in Breath of the Wild for sure, where you have
Most
to
definitely.
follow people around and they're doing their own thing at different times of the day. And I'm sure there's stuff in Wind Waker that I never even saw because I just wasn't at the right place at the right time on the right night, when the moon looks a certain way and all that stuff. Because there's some things that are dependent on the moon too, aren't there? Or maybe
I don't know.
maybe just nighttime. Maybe just nighttime, daytime.
I think there's a moon thing. There's a moon side quest. You shoot to the moon or you look at the moon or something, but I don't remember if
I think you have to take a picture of the moon.
There is that.
Yeah.
But it is definitely not a blood moon.
No. Thank God. It still is scary to me.
Why don't you get the blood moon's scary.
Link. Every time that comes up, I'm like, no.
Do you just skip it now?
Yeah.
Yep. It's a little creepy. Like the music starts going backwards when the blood moon rises and stuff like that. Yeah, I get it.
The little red particles start floating around. I'm like, oh no. Even though I know what it means now, when I first started playing the game, I was like, what is happening? What does this mean? I still don't like it.
Ah, got it. Because if the blood moon didn't happen, the game would have to remember in its code every single character that got defeated. And also the game might get boring if everything just stays empty.
That's true. That's a good point.
Okay, so let's see. What's your second? And then we'll go to break after that.
Sure. My number 4 choice is going to be, second or fourth.
Second up the list, fourth.
Right,
it's always
exactly.
a problem.
It's backwards. Mine is Hyrule Town from Minish Cap.
Oh, that's a great pick. I did not think of that one.
Yeah. I was going back. I'm like, okay, I can't just choose things from Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, and blah, because I do that every single time. And this was part of Minish Cap that I really like. I mean, I like the whole game in general, but I really liked Hyrule Town because it was yet another place that changes as you go through it. So it was much more detailed than I was expecting it to be, knowing that the game was early-ish, and it's not the newest game, but and it's a handheld game, even though I played it on the TV with the help of your adapter. It was still like way more than I thought. You go there first of all, and there's already like different building. You can't go inside all the buildings; they're not all available yet.
It is bustling.
Yeah, there's still people there that you can talk to. You can go in some of the buildings, even if they tell you like, well, we're not ready yet, come back later. You're like, okay, well, this is something I need to come back to later, obviously. There's the inner portion of it, and then there's outer buildings that you kind of have to travel further to get to. It changes as you progress through the game. You come back later on, and some of the shops have opened up now, and you can go talk to more people, and you can do more things. There's also all the little Picori little tunnels that you can go through. So that's like another aspect of it.
Yeah, it's a dense experience. You're right.
It really is. There's a lot to do. I don't even think I got through all the little like mini levels or mini, little tunnels and things that you can do. Some of them are required at some point. You do have to go through them and collect items and books, I think specifically, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there are, I think, buildings in there that I never got to, which shame on me.
But that makes it feel like an actual town.
Yeah. There's the school and a shoe cobbler and, other vendors and a library. It's like all actually really, indicative of a real town.
Yeah, it definitely feels like people are living there. And I realized as you were speaking, I agree completely that when you go into an earlier game, you say, okay, well, there's the 10 NPCs. I'm going to talk to all 10, and where do I get my clues? And I'll keep moving. Going into Castle Town or Hyrule Town?
Hyrule Town. This one, yeah.
Yeah. Hyrule Town in Minish Cap, you're overwhelmed, but in a good way. There is so much going on that you, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to everyone, you kind of just live. You kind of just go, well, I'm going to start walking around. And okay, I guess I'll talk to that person. Okay, I guess I'll talk to that person. And I know for me, there were people in that town that I didn't talk to till halfway through the game. You know what I mean?
And there are people that you, I think, have an inkling about that will say something different later on, so you can talk to them again and they'll have something else going on. You have the the builders from Kakariko Village and
Oh,
Ocarina.
yeah.
They're there, the carpenters and everything. So that was cool to see. Another little reference to those guys. So some familiar folks for sure. Some new characters. It's kind of a cool mix of familiar and new.
I like it. I think that's a great pick. That one totally, and I enjoy the Minish Cap very much. I didn't think of that one at all. That was awesome.
It was a place I like going back to. You know, I didn't mind having, because there's always a lot of backtracking in Zelda games. So that was a
Yeah.
place where I'd be like, oh, okay, I remember where things are, but it's still new and
There's
interesting.
gonna be enough that's new. You're right. You're right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you do kind of. You're going home when you go to Hyrule Town. Cool. Well, I think we're going to go to break. I think that was a great way to end the first act, and we'll come back around and do our other 3, like so.
Okay.
It's just kind of a by the book top 10 right here.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye.
Hey everybody, I hope you are enjoying the episode. I just wanted to take a minute here to tell you about a new show from 6.5 Media. It's called The Studio Demands It. There are just a couple episodes in right now. 2 gentlemen, T.C. DeWitt and Jim Berzelik, who are writers, screenwriters, film directors. They both live out in California. Every other week, they get together to essentially try to satisfy a fictional studio's demands. There's a lot of crazy ideas that happen in Hollywood, and oftentimes a studio needs to make something happen because of financial reasons or marketing reasons. And so each episode, TC and Jim, they kind of pick a topic out of a hat, you could say, and pretend that a studio is demanding a film be made of that topic. And they, as writers and screenwriters, try to essentially pitch an idea for that film. Ideas as horrible as things like maybe Titanic 2 or something like that. They've already done episodes on the Die Hard franchise, how to reboot Die Hard. They did most recently a Cannonball Run episode. What would you do if a studio demanded a remake or a reboot of Cannonball Run from the early 1980s? They've talked about the Expendables. How do you go forward with Expendables without Stallone attached? And so each week they just kind of do a thought experiment and pitch a fictional film to a fictional studio demanding something. So you can find them on Twitter and Instagram at Studio Demands It, or at their website, which is studiodemandsit.com. You can also find their episodes on iTunes and Google Play. So go check them out.
Not get on
You
that
wanna
crazy
get on?
train. No. No.
I'm getting on.
Don't get on.
I'm leaving you behind. I've started carrying cheese in my pockets all the time. Why have you done that?
Okay, we are back from the break, and I am here with my co-host Kate, and we are building a top 10 list of towns.
Top 10 towns.
Top 10 towns.
Top 10 towns. Yes. And we've had some good picks so far. I think we have some good ones to come. I'm excited to continue the conversation. So,
My next pick
yeah.
was an emotional one. It was very emotional.
Very emotional?
No. I made it because sometimes I try to pick things based on game mechanics or if I feel that they were a staple in the series. And a little bit Windfall was that way because I don't know if I remember Windfall as fondly, even though I enjoyed it. I just remember the first time that I went to Windfall Island, I was very taken and impressed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if when I play Wind Waker now, I'm like, just got to go back to Windfall. You know?
I mean, you do, but...
However, there's a town in the next game that I do often find myself thinking, I just want to go back while I'm playing the game. And sometimes I do just go hang out. So you might already be able to deduce that this is a town in Breath of the Wild because it's the kind of game where you might just go back to a town as you do. It is not Hatno Village, even though I do spend a lot of time there. It is Laurelin. What?
That's my next one, too.
Well, let's talk about it. I love it so much there.
Me too. I want to live there.
It's a little beach town. It's barely an actual town.
I know.
I don't even know if it has like a proper inn or a proper clothing store or anything.
It has an inn
Yeah.
and it has a fish market.
Right.
And it has a game. And that's about it.
And I know, like, sometimes when you go into Kakariko Village in Breath of the Wild, there's an archway on all three entrances, and you definitely feel like you're going into the town. Hatno even has an archway. I always call it Lorena Village, but I think it's
Laurelin or Laurelin.
Laurelin Village. It just kind of happens. You can approach it from the shore. You can come down from the mountains, and there's just these beautiful hut style houses, and it's a very beautiful little town, and it's very relaxing, and you don't have to do too much there. But I just find myself going back often just to hang out. There's a couple cool side quests in the area where you raft out into the ocean and stuff like that. But other than that, it's just a hangout village.
Yeah, I think my first time getting there, I like parasailed down from the mountains, and I
Cool.
was like, what is this oasis of delightfulness?
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you said it that way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. It's like an oasis.
It's so cool. The graphics are just so cool there. Like the sand always looks awesome in this game. The
That's
water
true.
looks so cool. The
That's true.
trees, the huts. It's also just so like aesthetically
A
pleasing.
lot of cool lighting in the evening with all the torches and stuff.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
sun sets over the ocean, so it's also very beautiful when the sun's going down.
Yes.
People just kind of hanging out by the fires, like roasting their fish. It reminds me of, just camping. So
It
maybe
does.
that's why we like it too, because you and I both enjoy camping so much.
I'm into this right now.
You can swim around in the water, get some fish easily. There are crabs running around, so you can grab some crabs if you want to. Yeah,
I don't
love
think you ever have to go there for the story. There's never the go to this village, go to that village. You just happen upon it. And it does remind me a little bit of the beachfront stuff that happens in Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. There's a bit of that kind of essence there for me. Maybe Lorelin Village is the actuality of how I feel when I am playing Link's Awakening, and it's just grids and you're just going down to the beach and you're just going into your town. But I love it there. Yeah, it's great stuff.
I think it reminds me of or it's like an enhanced version of Wind Waker kind of in that area too. Like I was reading
Geez, you're right.
I was reading about it, and it reminded some person that wrote an article about it of Outset Island kind of, but
agree.
like plussed beyond belief, like, a lot cooler.
Oh man, now I'm just gonna go there. I'm gonna wear my little blue Wind Waker shirt and just hang out, I think.
Perfect. Yeah. When I had put Breath of the Wild down for a while and I picked it up again, I think that was the first place that I went just to kind of go to there.
Yeah.
And just walk around and hang out. I couldn't find the statue to exchange my orbs at in that village for whatever reason. I think
Is there one there?
there is apparently, but I couldn't find it. I ran around.
I don't know if I've ever found it either, and maybe that's why I also kind of was wondering if it was actually a town.
Yeah, I think it's like on the outside of one of the huts or something, kind of out of the way where it's not in the middle of the town.
You're right. I
village.
remember. It is just kind of plunked on the side of a house.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember it now.
And I couldn't find it. And that was one of the reasons also that when I turned the game back on, I was going to go there because I had a whole bunch of orbs to get rid of or whatever. I'm like, I can go there. It's pretty. I can do this. And then I couldn't find the statue, but I'm like, whatever. It's cool to run around anyway. There is a Gerudo woman that you can talk to who tells you about Eventide Island if you haven't been there yet. She's like,
interesting.
I want to go there. And then she's like impressed with you if you've been there, I guess, and you tell her that you've already been. So if you don't know about Eventide Island, that's a good way to get to it. So that's another cool little bonus about it. Definitely do that if y'all have not done that little side quest because it's awesome. I like the fish market area. That's just
cool graphics.
I would just want to visit there.
Oftentimes I'd find myself just walking out on the pier and just looking at the boats that are selling things. And you just there are many beautiful spots in Breath of the Wild, but that is an entire town where you're not preoccupied with what you should be doing and you kind of can just look around and it's really nice.
People there are kind of relaxed. They don't seem to be super affected by all the craziness that's going on everywhere else.
You're absolutely right. And that town is kind of off on its own anyway. It's down, but if you get there from a path, you definitely, if I remember correctly, there's a pretty obvious path and there's a little bit of an offshoot that goes down into a valley and you might even go through a tunnel. I think there's like a rocky overpass if you actually do it from the road, so to speak. And then you kind of get revealed. So they definitely are off on their own.
Yeah. I was reading more about it just to see if there was maybe something about it that I had missed when playing it. And people were theorizing that like, I wonder if if they trade fish with like the
Yeah. Oh, I'm listening.
You know, oh my God,
On the edge of my seat.
the
Mhm.
water people.
The Zoras?
Yes, I can't think of that. Oh, I'm hurting. I'm punching
fine.
myself on
Everybody-
the inside.
No, it's fine.
I couldn't think of it for whatever reason.
okay.
So yeah, people were saying, "Oh, I wonder if they trade fish with the Zoras because it's a fishing village, and I wonder how this place interacts with everyone else." And they're
Yeah.
kind of like putting this story together for this town that doesn't really have much of a story, but I feel like deserves more.
So the developers are done with Breath of the Wild. They're not making any more DLC or releasing any more DLC. But I could see how a gamer or a consumer or a player of the game would really be tempted, and how there could possibly be, maybe it's a slippery slope, but there could be an opportunity where I would absolutely pay money for a small DLC pack that would continue a story in some of these towns, these kind of thing. You know what I mean? If there, I'm not saying that should happen. I actually think that Nintendo's making the right choice. Go make the next game. I get it. Let this town be what it is. But you can see how this stuff happens sometimes with DLC, where it's like, well, let's put a story over there. That could be cool, because I do want to know more about that town. And honestly, Kakariko is beautiful. In Breath of the Wild, it's interesting. It looks a little different than the other renditions of Kakariko Village. Hatno's fine. Is very functional. You can do a lot there. You literally end up living there.
Yeah.
My niece is playing Breath of the Wild right now, and she's 6 or 7 years old, and she's legitimately doing side quests, but she has exclusively played inside Hatno Village for the past 5 or 6 hours of gameplay.
Wow.
And she's just in there meeting everybody and getting to know everybody. She goes up and talks to the lady up by the observatory, and she comes back down. She has not left Hatno Village. She bought her house. She actually had to save up money. She ended up getting enough money. She was finding rocks and then selling them over and over and over, and finally bought the house.
Nice.
And so that speaks to, I almost had Hatno in here, actually, as one of
Yeah.
my towns, because it is
so
so
too.
functional. But I had to go with emotion on this one. It's if I had the choice, I go to Laurelin.
I agree. Did you do any of the side quests for this one?
I think I did many. I think I did the fire up on the mountain or in the hill. I did the raft out into the water. There might be a few that I haven't gotten to. Are there some that I should know about?
I don't know. So I have only kind of started the what's for dinner one, where you have to find a certain type of crab and something else to give to the woman who needs to make dinner for her kids. And then there's one called Sunken Treasure and one called Take Back the Sea, but I don't think I've done either one of
One or
those.
two of those I did. There's one where you there's one where you have to pull something out of the ocean kind of in the bay part.
I'm guessing that's Sunken Treasure.
It probably is. But then there's like kind of a +1 version of that where you actually have to take the raft way out into the ocean and find more treasure or items or something.
I don't think I did that. Did you do the treasure chest gambling game?
No, I didn't. In fact, you and I have spoken about this in the past. I sometimes kind of steer clear of the games.
Yeah. Especially the ones that are completely chance. Like this does not involve skill at all.
Right.
It's just, the more money you wager, the higher chance you have of winning rupees. Well, I put in 100, I got 1. So I'm like, well, not doing that again.
I feel like it's fine, but I'd rather just go mine some rocks and sell them.
Agreed. So the treasure chest game is the meh part of that village, but
Right.
the rest of it, I love. So that was your number 4 or 3? That's 3.
Sorry? Oh, I just noticed something weird on our recorder. This episode might sound a little different because check. Now you say check.
Check.
I'm going to leave this. I'm even going to keep this in the episode. I think I'm accidentally recording both of our mics onto the same channel here. So this episode might be a little more echoey than other episodes, but I'm definitely getting our audio.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
right here, right on the air. I'm sorry, listeners. I just looked down and saw some strange waveforms on our recorder. But anyway, we'll keep going.
It's
Yeah.
aliens. It's definitely aliens.
No. That's Majora's Mask.
Oh, sorry.
There are aliens in Majora's Mask.
That's fine.
Okay, so then I guess Laurelin Village was your third?
Yeah, that was my third.
So I guess it's back to me. Speaking of Majora's Mask,
Oh,
I had to choose Termania. And Termania is the hub town in Majora's Mask. And I had to choose it. I actually think, it did come out before Windfall Island, but I put it higher on the list because I think it's actually more impactful than Windfall Island. Because the thing with Termania, and I've spoken about this many times in the past, so I feel like I kind of want to go over it a little quicker in this episode. In Termania, every single NPC has a life. Every single NPC has a point. Every single NPC has a purpose, and their purposes and points and lives change over the course of 3 days. Because Majora's Mask only lasts 3 days, they were able to microscopically program every single NPC to have really important things.
Sure.
Whereas, like in Breath of the Wild, like in Laurelin Village, a lot of that's more systemic or AI, and that stuff happens a little bit more naturally,
Right.
which I think is even more impressive. But back in the days, imagine doing Ocarina, and 2 or 3 months later, you have to make another game, and there's an opportunity to do that. And they did use the same assets for Majora's Mask. That's Legend. But to say, well, let's have these NPCs really, really matter, because the NPCs in Ocarina are pretty basic.
Right.
You
They
know?
have like maybe 2 things they can say to you.
Yeah.
Even if they have a game or a task or something, there's not too much going on.
At most, they might say something a little different to you at night compared to during the daytime.
Right.
And so to go completely on the other end of the spectrum, at the cost of only being able to have 3 days, but to have every single person performing this 3-day play that's 30 people big that you get to move through. Hey, have you ever gone to one of these, I know Milwaukee does this from time to time. It's an interactive play where you go into a building and there are scenes that are, the entire play has like 5 or 6 scenes happening in the building all at once, and the narrative moves through, and you as an audience member walk through the building and experience the scenes in any way that you choose. Have you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I've heard of that, but that kind of thing scares the crap out of me because I do not like audience participation or feeling like that might be a possibility. So I probably would not check something like that out.
I hear you on that. I think they usually just allow you to be an observer. I think you're right. Like if I were to direct one of those, like maybe you create some kind of story device where the audience is actually watching something that happened in the past, and that can't be changed, and so there isn't audience participation. But the idea of just kind of experiencing a living scripted, I guess, world, is kind of cool. And so Majora's Mask is that. And so I had to put Termania in there because, well, Termania is technically the whole area.
Right.
I think it's actually, I don't know what the actual town is called.
Clocktown.
Oh, Clocktown.
Clocktown.
Oh, this is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clocktown.
Clocktown.
Clocktown's my second, not Termania.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was like, I think he's talking about Clocktown.
Well, I saw the shifty eyes, and that's why I kept triggering in my back of my brain while I was talking. Like back in the background, I was kind of like clicking through, like, am I saying this correctly?
And I was wondering, have I seen this? Because I've only played some of Majora's Mask, but obviously you do that right away. You go to Clocktown, right?
Well, and you do it right away and all the way.
Right.
In fact, I would argue that with the exception of finding the 4 temples, the game is navigating Clocktown.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I like it. From what I actually remember of the game, which is not a lot, but that's of course the part that I played the most often because I would only get so far and then I'd be like, no,
Right.
I'm stopping. But yeah, I remember getting lost in there because there's like the east, west, north, and south areas, right? And so not only is there just an area, there's like 5 areas that you can explore, different levels and plenty of people to talk to for sure. So I can totally see spending all the time, not just because you have to, but also because you want to in that area.
I agree. And, some of that Clocktown is a little bit more abstract, but there are areas like the curving market and like when you go into the mayor's office where these buildings make geographic sense. They make, construction sense.
Yeah.
Like you go upstairs and the rooms are really above the lobbies of these buildings, and these characters navigate through those buildings in a logical way, I'll say.
Yeah.
And that is, I think there's something to be said for that, because when you go into, I guess, Castletown in Ocarina, it presents well. It looks cool for those first 10 seconds, but that's about what you get.
Right. I think in Clocktown, I think I remember talking about this in another episode. It's kind of the different areas are divided up into different like commerce center. Like there's the shopping
There's
district,
definitely the market,
and the another district is over here, and
Yeah.
I think it's kind of divided up, like you said, in a way that makes sense for a real town.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
That's all I have to say about that.
Well, sorry to go back and repeat some stuff that we've already talked about, but my number 2 is Windfall Island.
Let's do it.
So that's where mine came up. So obviously we've already talked about it on this list a little bit, but it's another version of a town that feels complete to me. So you have your potion shop, you have your bomb shop, you have a lighthouse, there's a windmill, there's a school, there's a cafe and bar, there's your auction house, there's a jail. There's so many things of an actual city and town, and I think that's part of the reason why it feels so realized.
Yeah.
Is like, okay, I could live here and go shopping and go to jail if I had to. There are things to look at and destinations like the light. You could just go to the lighthouse, or go to the windmill and look at it, or just hang out there, something to view. Go to the auction house and be part of like the town meeting kind of that they have there. Also, I like the auction house. It's just like this ridiculous, flamboyant looking house. Isn't that the one with all the glittering pots that are
definitely.
sitting around?
I always accidentally enter through because of the way I must just naturally travel through Windfall. I always accidentally enter through the top back door.
Oh, sure.
And then I'm like, where am I? And then I look down and sometimes I'll jump down. But I've never entered that building the proper way in all its grandeur.
Oh, yeah. I've done both. And then I didn't even realize what you're supposed to be doing there. When we played through for our playthrough, our review episode of that game, it was the first time that I had actually gone there during an auction. Oh, because I didn't know, or I didn't maybe care enough. I don't know, but
I don't know if I've seen an auction there. I have to admit.
Yeah, you have to go at a certain. I think you have to go at night, and I generally try to not go to towns and villages at night because I feel like there's less to do.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I remember this now.
Yeah. So I just think it's interesting that this big thing goes on at nighttime there. And so you can obviously do different things at different times. You have a few different side quests you can do there. The joy pendants are part of that whole thing. Those stupid little kids that you have to chase around and find. I don't like the children, but whatever. They're there. I mean, it's another thing that you can do. You have your like camera shop guy where you talk to him and about taking your pictographs or whatever they are.
Yep.
So there's a decent amount of stuff to do on that island just in the daytime. And then like we were talking about, if you go at night, there's a couple other things. You can keep an eye out on a guy who's like sneaking to the mailbox to mail a love letter. You have to like take a picture of him. And there's there's plenty of space to explore, but you're not going to get lost by any means.
Right.
You're probably going to go over the same paths over and over again, like retread those paths, but that's fine. It's fun to walk around. There's that Ferris wheel too that I don't think I could ever figure out.
The windmill Ferris wheel.
Ferris wheel, yeah. So a couple things there that I still haven't done and I can do on my next playthrough.
That always was kind of weird. It's like, is it a windmill? Is it a ride? What are we doing?
Yeah, that part was confusing to me. I feel like there's always something new that I happen upon, whether it's part of a side quest or geographically speaking. I think I found like tunnels and stairways, maybe like one of each that I hadn't been to last time.
Right.
It's like just detailed enough where there are little secrets I think that you can find. I think I was always able to find like the disco dancing guy out on the cliff.
That's right.
And that's fun. But there's like another guy that you can talk to kind of in that area, which I don't think I talked to him before. There's little NPCs like hidden away, I think, every so often on Windfall Island. That's
Yeah. I also just realized that it's a very vertical town compared to other towns. There's to get to the bar, you go upstairs above another shop, and everything's layered on top of itself, whereas certainly Castletown and Ocarina is very flat. If you're lucky, you go up on that one balcony, and that's amazing.
Wow.
Like, I got all the way up here.
There's maybe a door up here that's open for not right away in the game and only in the daytime later on. Yay!
That's right. So, yeah, so Windfall definitely has that too. Very vertical, very I think I remember being a little overwhelmed with Windfall because I was kind of like, oh, this is just a small path, but it goes to this whole other area. And so you do have to learn Windfall, which I think in retrospect is a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Keeps it interesting.
So my final.
Time for number one.
My favorite.
Top Town.
My favorite top town. That was hysterical.
Top Town.
I have to do more alliteration for our episodes because you subscribe.
It's the best.
So I love this town. The second I walked in, I was into it. All the time I spent in it, I was into it. I feel like maybe functionally there's other towns that do more, but this one was if Termania. Okay, here's the progression. If Castletown and Ocarina, if Ocarina gave us a snapshot of a town, and then Termania gave us a living town, but only for 3 days, and then if Wind Waker gave us a living town, a little bit more based on AI, some programming, my ultimate town experience is Castletown from Twilight Princess.
I knew it. I was like thinking about where you were going, and that's why I was giving the side eyes that obviously our listeners can clearly hear. But I was like, he's gonna think Castletown and Twilight Princess.
To this day, Castletown and Twilight Princess is amazing. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a lot of people walking around without objectives, but it has a lot of people. It's the only, even Breath of the Wild doesn't even do this.
Right.
But Castletown and Twilight Princess is the only Zelda game where it feels like you're in a busy city when you actually go to Castletown.
It feels bustling.
Yes, indeed, absolutely.
There's a lot of bustle.
There's maybe hundreds of people walking around. Maybe not in a single shot, but
Right.
Conceivably there's hundreds of people walking around. They all have little lives. Some of them have more direction than others. They already have the artificial intelligence built in so that all the little characters don't walk into each other. They walk around you. That code was later used for Epona in Breath of the Wild to not run into trees, by the way.
Oh.
But or an evolution on that code. It was a similar AI technique. And I remember the first time going into Castletown, and it's not humongous. I mean, it does have its kind of, not burrows, but it has its sides a little bit like Clocktown in Termania. Actually, there's a little bit more reminiscent there than I realize now with like in the curving parts by the market and stuff like that. But aesthetically, visually, the image of actually seeing produce, actually seeing pots being sold, actually seeing the market and people walking around and actually seeing all this stuff, not just representations of it like in Ocarina.
Yeah.
The reason I say a lot of it's smoke and mirrors is because I think ultimately there's not a tremendous amount to do in that town. There's some things to do, but there's not a tremendous amount. But boy, does it deliver on the experience.
Yeah. I mean, you can talk to people that it doesn't really make a difference what they're like, oh, I have these things for sale. So it's like you can talk to everyone. Not everyone's going to have something specific to say to you or about you or for you, but that almost makes it more realistic because not everyone, if I go to downtown Milwaukee, not everyone's going to want to talk to me. They're going to be like, hey, I'm selling this thing. And they're just going to say, oh, I heard a rumor about blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just kind of cool things where you want to talk to everyone because everyone has something slightly different to say that relates to something different.
Yeah, I agree. And it was when I went to Windfall, I was like, oh, that's cool. This almost feels lived in. And then, Termania or Clocktown was like, oh, that's cool. All these people are scripted. It feels like it's lived in. When I first played Twilight Princess, I played it on the GameCube. And I walked into Castletown. It was an emotional experience that was a new experience that I had never felt before in a Zelda game because of the presentation.
Yeah.
And that does it for me. I would say that based on presentation, maybe not mechanics, but based on presentation, it's the ultimate like Zelda city that if I'm going to go to the big Zelda city, nothing's happened since then. That makes not even Skyward, Skyloft might be doing more. Skyloft might have more going on and more artificial intelligence and more happening.
It's almost too much, though, in a way, because you can get totally lost in Skyloft, and I don't necessarily like that because it's all twisty-turny roads everywhere. But Castletown makes sense.
You feel the crowd.
Yeah, it's like what Castletown should be, or like what they wanted it to feel like and look like in Ocarina of Time, especially because when you go in Ocarina of Time, they have that like mumbling crowd noise in the background. It's like we can't exactly put these people actually on the screen, but we can like give you the noise to make it seem heavily populated. Whereas this version is like the real deal.
I agree.
Feels more,
yes.
more authentic.
I've said in the past, like, sometimes with Ocarina, you have to, if you see 10 people, you have to imagine 100 live there. In Twilight Princess, you didn't have to imagine. And that's cool.
And so it's also, I think you mentioned this already. It's also divided up into like different sections, much like Clocktown is. So your South Road is like the market area, food booths, and flowers for sale.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the wiki right now, and that's kind of what I was talking about, where these people have things for sale that link. You can't even buy them. So it's
Right,
like, why
right.
are they even here? Just for the environment's sake, to make it seem like a real place. I mean, it's not gonna just have. That's something that Breath of the Wild does not have. When you go to like Gerudo Town or something, it's like, here, buy these arrows, buy these things. You can buy all of them. And it seems maybe less authentic for that reason. I'm the only one probably that needs to be buying these arrows. It's not like the Gerudo
Right.
use bows and arrows.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Why are they selling them?
Where's the shop that sells the mop and the bucket?
Right, exactly. The normal things. I mean, they do have like a bar or cafe that kind of makes sense there, but yeah, why do they sell bows and arrows there? They sell food that makes a little more sense, but here in Twilight Princess, they're selling flowers and foods that you wouldn't even be able to buy, but it's just what a real town would be like.
Yeah.
Also, I would want to go to Telma's bar in real life.
Yeah, it
I
does
think
seem
I would.
cool.
I would think I would want to hang out there. For one thing, it's like underground, and whenever I go to New York City, like Bill, or Chicago for that matter, Bill and I always kind of look for the kind of down below bars because those are more fun to me. There's one particular one in the West Village in New York City that we've gone to twice now, because you have to like go downstairs and it's like a basement bar, and we love it.
That's cool.
So that's like what Telma's bar is to
I agree
me.
completely.
Like the cool basement bar where the owner's like really cool and sassy and funny. So
I love it.
I would like to visit there.
That's all I have to say about Castletown. That's great. May I ask what your top town is?
It's Terrytown.
Oh my goodness, you picked Terrytown. I am not that I need to approve. I'm fine with this. Please tell me, why was it your top?
How shocking that
Is it
it's
because you
Terrytown.
make it yourself? What is it? What is it?
The theme for my pick so far has been towns that grow and evolve and change. And I think this is the ultimate example of that, because you have something to do with it. You are building this town. You're helping to build the town, at least.
Completely agree. I see where you're going with this.
Because you have to be the one harvesting the wood and providing the wood. I mean, you're not like literally building it, but you're providing the materials, and then you go back and visit, and there are more people there all of a sudden. The story evolves. It's like its own side quest that's not just really easy to knock out right away. Like, it's a side quest that takes a long time. It probably takes the most time out of any of the side quests.
Absolutely.
In Breath of the Wild. So it just requires a lot of effort, a lot of attention. You get invested in it for that reason. There's something really sweet and awesome about a town that is filled with completely different races and types of people.
Yeah, that's cool.
That all have something in common. In this case, it's their name.
It is the melting pot of Hyrule.
Yeah. I like that you specifically have to go and find different people and bring them to this place. And they're always like, that sounds like a really nice place to live. I think I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
It's like so I live in Milwaukee, and I love living in Milwaukee. And the things that make me happiest about living in Milwaukee is going somewhere like a street festival or something and seeing all the different kinds of people all hanging out together, having a great time, loving where they live. There was a lot of that going on during the recent Milwaukee Bucks doing so well,
Oh, sure.
So there was this place outside of the stadium called the Deer District, where everyone was hanging out, and it didn't matter what you looked like, how old you were, any of that. That's where you were having fun. And so Terrytown is, I guess, my emotional choice.
And I like it. I like it a lot.
Because I'm like, there are all these different types of people, and
Some of those people are even kind of displaced in their own town. They can't find their place. The Rito he wants to start his own shop, even if he's a little bit of a baby at first. Like, he wants to start his own shop, and he can't find his way in his own town, and then he goes
Right.
to Terrytown.
They're kind of misfits, some of them,
Little
know?
bit.
And fine, it's a little exclusive, and that your name has to end with son to live there, whatever. So hopefully they can get over that.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're right. That's a little, yeah. That may not be. Yeah, I love Terry Cult.
Yeah, it's fine. So, hopefully they open up their arms and doors to some more folks. But the gist is that, there are all these different people, two of whom get married to each other that are different to each other. And I've always really liked that. I still like when I play that game to go there, just like I go to Lurelin Village or however you would say it.
Yeah,
I
that's
go
fine.
back to Terrytown because there's also a lot of stuff for sale there. There's a lot of different stands all in one
That's true.
consolidated little place. You can get weapons, there's a clothing store, there's all sorts of different stuff you can buy, and then you can also sell your, jewels and what have you.
It's the only place to buy a Hyrule shield once you've gotten it from the castle.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that you're right. That it becomes a nice little hub to just get stuff real quick.
There's a great fairy fountain right outside of it or nearby.
You feel some ownership a little bit that you've helped a little bit, and I'm into this. I like this a lot. Yeah.
You're like proud of it by the end. Like, oh, I turned this into like a little bustling town. And that statue to trade in your orbs is very easy to find. It's right smack dab in the middle.
You're absolutely right. And to that point, you're right. If in Castletown and Twilight Princess, you might find yourself just walking around, looking around, and having the crowd pass by. In Terrytown, I have done this. You find yourself walking around and looking around. And I honestly, this might sound a little weird, I found myself just walking around Terrytown and looking at a tree. Because that tree wasn't there before because it was a pile of rocks. And that fence wasn't there before it was a pile of rocks. And all of a sudden, all these little pieces of the houses and the steps and the benches and the tables, they matter a little bit more because they weren't there the first time you were there.
Yeah, exactly. You're seeing a town come to life and get bigger, and it's really cool. You have everything that you need there, plus some other side quests that you can do within that side quest. Like there are other things that you can do within there. You can also explore the houses and do that kind of stuff. There's a cooking pot right there. Like everything is right there. It's super convenient.
Cool. I like it.
So that's my number one pick.
I think that's great. If I'm counting correctly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we're at 7 right now because we might have had some doubles.
Yeah.
Right now the list is going Rudo Town in ascending order, going up. We're Rudo Town, then Kakariko, then Windfall Island, then Lurelin Village, then Clocktown, then Castletown, then Terrytown.
Don't forget about Hyrule Town.
Yeah, wait, what? Oh, okay.
Minish Cap.
Ooh, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was my number 4.
Putting it in.
Yeah.
I have a couple honorable mentions that maybe we can fill some of these out just for the fun of it.
Sure.
Do you have any at all, by the way?
I just have one kind of one.
Ooh, I have 2, so I'll do one of mine.
You go.
One is it's an honorable mention, but I almost felt obligated, and it's just Kakiri Forest because it was the first.
Sure.
Yes, there were towns in The Adventure of Link, and yes, there were towns in A Link to the Past, but Kakiri Forest is a penultimate. I don't know, ultimate, penultimate. Live in this space. It does feel like the people live there, like you literally see their beds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was one little honorable mention. What did you have?
I had the Twilight Realm, actually.
Whoa, let's do it.
Just because it's so weird and different. So that was one of my honorable mentions, is when you go to the Twilight Realm, and it's not even, people obviously live there, but it's so different from anything that you've seen before. It's like it's like this alien landscape of just like, I don't know what to call them, like shrines or something. There are these big massive buildings that obviously you have to go in and carry your little light ball around and everything.
Right.
But there are people that live there that you have to save. And I just picked it because it's just so bizarre. Like the music is bizarre. The townspeople look bizarre. You almost don't want to help them because they're so creepy. You're like, are these good guys? Are they bad guys? What's going on? And then you learn that they're these people that are imprisoned in their own town. So it's like, oh gosh, now I do have to help this weird looking thing just because they're in a terrible circumstance and that sucks and I want to help them. And it's just, I don't know what, inspired the crew that, is working on this game to make it look like how it looked or why, but it's just so completely out there that I feel like I had to include it because it's so different.
I'm into that. I have another Twilight Princess honorable mention, and this one's weaker. That's why it's an honorable mention. But I remember going to Zora's Domain in Twilight Princess. I did feel like I was visiting another place. Ultimately, I think it is kind of just a pool inside a mountain. But there's a lot of stuff around the edges and going up the river and getting there. By the time I got to Zora's Domain and it wasn't frozen anymore, certainly much more than Zora's Domain in Ocarina, I was like, this is cool. This feels like these people live here. These creatures live here. They might have a different way of living, but I felt like I was in a place that was lived in. There we go. We'll say it that way.
Yeah. And I just liked swimming around and kind of exploring that area. There was definitely several things to do there. You know, you climb through all the various tunnels and whatnot around there. You can just dive around and swim in the water.
Yeah, you're right.
That's cool.
Maybe we could throw some of these in there. Cool.
Yeah. Would you consider like Snow Peak? No, it's not a town. It's just a house. So
It is just a house.
I don't know if that would really.
I feel like
fit
there
in, but
needs
I
to be.
liked it.
I like it too. I get it, and it's aesthetically very different. It's not too often that a dungeon is expressed as kind of a house, but
Sorry,
feel like
I'm dying. I took a drink and I'm dying.
It's okay. It's okay. We're about to wrap this episode up. It's actually the second half has gone a little long. I'm making this up on the spot, but I would say I feel like if there needs to be a bit of a sense of community and maybe non-family members interacting with each other creates a town, that kind of thing.
I agree. I just always really liked Snow Peak just because you're exploring a house. It's kind of when you go into the castle in Breath of the Wild, it's kind of reminiscent of that. You know, there are different rooms that you might have not experienced before in a Zelda game that it feels like people do live there. But I also agree that it's just one house.
I hear you. I like that. Kate, let's get out of here. This second half went a little longer than I expected. And let's see if people have any thoughts on some of their favorite towns when they've been playing the games. There might be some in the Game Boy games that we didn't think of. I mean, I almost put Animal Village from Link's Awakening in here. But ultimately, I'm sorry, I had to go with some of these towns that I felt, and a lot of them were Castletown, but towns that really changed the experience for me is what I had to go with.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So if people do want to share some of their experiences with us, they can do that by tweeting us at Another Zelda Pod or finding us on Instagram at Another Zelda Podcast or searching Facebook and YouTube and all the rest. Just search Another Zelda Podcast or go to our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com.
Excellent job.
Kate,
it's a lot to talk. It's a lot to mention.
Well, it's a lot of Another Zelda Podcast. You could almost just say like Another Zelda Podcast. Do the things.
Do the thing.
Honestly, if you type that in the Google search, you're gonna be fine. Kate, if people want to chat with you personally, or if they want to reply at you,
yes. You can find me on Instagram. I only take cat pics. And if you want to talk to me on Discord, you should shout me out specifically because unfortunately I don't see everything on there. I try to check it out every once in a while, but if you want to talk to me specifically on there, I'm Catertot.
I love it. You know, honestly, I feel like our Discord is becoming our own little Castletown, and I'm not trying to be clever when I say that, but what I mean by that is it's taking on a life of its own. It is now a community that we are not in charge of, and we visit, quite frankly.
Yeah, I've seen people like say, hey, you know, what do you think about this? And blah, 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 and just having their own conversations, and it's awesome.
That's the whole point.
Anytime there can be positive, you know, friendly group communication on the interwebs, I am all for it.
I like it a lot too.
It's not very frequent in this day and age, so I love it, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep being friends with each other on Discord. It's lovely.
I love that. People can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Discord by finding me at Raptor Paint. And Kate, let's get out of here. Let's do this. It's a nice day, like we said at the top of the episode. I'm getting anxious to get out in the weather.
Okay. Bye.